Good evening, guys, and welcome to Saturday night. It is now officially Sunday. This is my last night in one country that I will definitely be visiting again, hopefully, in the future, and that is Ireland. I am coming to you from the lobby of my hotel, and it has been a great 4 days. It's also been a great opportunity to try to disconnect without having to pay attention to all of the hoopla that's going on around the world all the time. But what I will say, I could not have picked a better time to have to come back because it's going to be interesting to see how things ultimately unfold in the States. So I'm sure all of you know what's going to be one of the primary, if not the primary, talking point topic of this evening. Of course, this was something that many of us have been concerned about. And so now that it has happened, I'm very grateful for the friendship that I have built with Anthony Aguilar. He told me that this was probably going to happen about a month ago, and the timeline was slightly off, but he was pretty close. And it is unfortunate that he was right. I was hoping he'd be wrong, but we certainly have not learned from the past. And it's not even a question of whether the people have learned from the past, although I will say, if those of you who've been paying attention on social media, I'm sure you've come across quite a few people that have voiced opinions that they probably should have kept to themselves. There is a really big disconnect between those that have something to lose versus those that don't, and those that are willing to put people in harm's way. Now, there are going to be many layers to why President Nicolas Maduro was captured by, it doesn't really matter. I saw that Greg Stoker had pointed out that it was the DEA, but in reality, it was the CIA. All three-letter agencies work in concert in some way, shape, or form. But what we do know is that this was a colossal mistake of epic proportions that I don't think anybody has fully wrapped their heads around just yet. There will be many prevailing theories as to why he was taken. Obviously, the most obvious being the crude oil supply under Venezuela's soil is the largest in the world by far, excess of over 300 billion with a B barrels of crude oil. And so naturally, because we believe that we were put on this earth to kick ass and take names, we thought it would be a good idea to just go in there and do regime change. Now, whatever the reasoning is behind why this happened, as I said, many will have prevailing theories. But I have a theory. I have a very crystal clear-cut theory as to why this happened. And it comes down to the person who was in charge of Venezuela and who will now be put in charge of Venezuela. Now, at the top of the hour, we will be speaking with Anthony Aguilar. But in the meantime, I want to share my thoughts as to what I've seen so far. It's pretty clear. There is a contrasting difference in many respects between Maduro and Machado. Now, I don't want to hear nothing about Maduro is a dictator, he treats his people terribly. You know how many dictators we have around the world that treat their people a hell of a lot worse? How about we don't even leave the continent? Why don't we stay right in South America? Javier Milei is much more of a tyrannical leader than Nicolas Maduro could ever be. But we don't talk about that. You know why? Because Milei plays ball and Maduro does not. And it really is that simple when you get right down to it. Throw all the politics aside, regardless of what you think of the leader in question, whether they're good or not. Most leaders suck. We all know that. Do you adhere to the will of U.S. empire? And also, do you adhere to the will of the Zionist state? So I'm going to show you guys the distinct difference between these two and why one did their job the wrong way And now you have someone doing it the way that the empire wants them to do. It was President Maduro not too long ago addressing the elephant in the room.
Ahora los racistas y supremacistas del sionismo hoy quieren acabar con el pueblo palestino. Y digo más, quieren acabar con todo el pueblo árabe, con todo el pueblo musulmán. Han sembrado una ideología del odio, de la racia. La han sembrado durante 75 años.
So President Maduro, 1 month after October 7th, 2023, 1 month, is making a statement condemning the state of Israel, the Zionist ideology, and all that it stands for. Yes, he was opening up a big can of worms by going down that road, but it was the right thing to do. And that was the beginning of the end, however long it was going to take, of him being in charge. They knew that he was not going to adhere to the will of the Zionist state. They could not rely on him. And there's an interesting caveat to this story that we're going to get to, that we'll talk about with Anthony. But this is a great example of how right off the bat, you're going to see the distinct difference between the two. The former leader and who is going to be installed as the new leader.
Con el apoyo de Occidente. Atención, mundo bueno que me escucha. Atención, hombres y mujeres de los Estados Unidos, de Europa y del mundo. Han sembrado una ideología más peligrosa que la nazi.
Declaring that Zionism is more dangerous than Nazism. That's pretty bold. And I think it's safe to say at this point that that's pretty much a clear-cut case. I don't see how anybody can't look at Zionism now and not see just how detrimental to humanity that ideology truly is. Now, maybe in the size and scope, they haven't taken out as many in terms of numbers as far as Nazism or Stalinism or Maoism, but they're certainly going to try to compete as they are right now. So Maduro has a little bit more to say.
Primero contra el pueblo palestino. Racia, exterminio, genocidio, bombas atómicas. Y luego vienen los pueblos árabes, todos los pueblos musulmanes. Y después quieran venir por nosotros, los cristianos, los católicos. Paremos al tiempo el genocidio. Paremos a tiempo.
To Maduro's credit, he was calling it a genocide against the Palestinian people not even 1 month into the genocide, when a lot of people were still trying to wrap their heads on what was going on in Gaza. But not Maduro. He knew what was going on, and he called it out for what it was. So credit to him. How many others were slow on the uptake about the mass killings of the Palestinian people, the bombings, the rapes, all those things? Seems pretty substantial. Do not lose sight of why this happened.
El genocidio sionista contra el amado y pueblo palestino.
Now that's the former president now of the of the Venezuelan people, speaking in support of the Palestinian people. Now he did, and this is the thing that I want people also to recognize, because there's so many more layers to this that we're going to get to. But in addition to the commentary from the installed, or what is assumed to be the installed new president of the country of Venezuela, Vice President Rodriguez is not allowing this to go unnoticed, of what Maduro said over 2 years ago. Here's what this was her official statement earlier today.
Es tan sencillamente impactados de que sea la República Bolivariana de Venezuela víctima y objeto de un ataque de esta naturaleza que tiene sin duda alguna tinte sionista. Es realmente vergonzoso. Lo dijo nuestro padre libertador en la Carta de Jamaica. El velo se ha rasgado, ya hemos visto la luz y se nos quiere volver a las tinieblas. Se han roto las cadenas, ya hemos sido libres y nuestros enemigos pretenden de nuevo esclavizarnos. Si hay algo que el pueblo venezolano y que este país tiene muy claro, es que jamás volveremos a ser esclavos. Se activa toda Venezuela y el decreto que ya fue suscrito por el presidente Maduro, único presidente de Venezuela. Hay un solo
Uno presidente de Venezuela, which means there is only one president in Venezuela. And we, the people of Venezuela, are not going to lie down for this. Now, we're going to show you why in a minute, despite all of the obvious propaganda, heavy-handed propaganda that is coming down left and right from all the powers that be. They are going absolutely bananas at the prospect of trying to take over this country without a fight. They think that this is going to happen, that they're just going to roll over. The Venezuelan people are just going to roll over and die or give in to the demands of the empire, the Judeo-Christian empire. Am I right? He has a little bit more to say before we finish up.
solo presidente en este país que se llama Nicolás Maduro Moro.
So, the people have something to say. But first, you have to see the contrasting difference between Maduro and Machado. Here's what the Nobel Prize winning, soon to be potentially installed president, puppet president of Venezuela had to say about Israel-Palestine.
To thank Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
I promise one day we'll have a close relationship between Venezuela and Israel.
I myself look forward to visit the State of Israel.
Now, call me crazy, but why is the president of Venezuela so concerned about visiting the State of Israel? And why make such a clear distinction on that topic from Maduro? Isn't it obvious? Did you know that usury is banned in Venezuela? It is. How can the Zionist Jewish banking cartel take over the country? Put in a puppet president that gets on their hands and knees, literally and figuratively, for the State of Israel, which is exactly what this person, this Nobel Prize winning person, intends to do. She's laying it right out there. We welcome Netanyahu Milikowski. We welcome the State of Israel, and we look forward to visiting your state. Argentina is not enough. Venezuela has to be refuge for the Zios as well. At least that's what this person intends to do. When you see it, you can't unsee it. No matter how much they try to propagandize you, don't let them. This is the truth.
As soon as we conquer freedom, we will prevail.
And I can announce this, that our government will move our Israeli embassy to Jerusalem.
Will you? Why is that so important? You know, I'm still trying to understand the significance other than trying to start a holy war by moving the Venezuelan embassy to Jerusalem. First it's the US, then it's Argentina, now Venezuela. There is a pretty universal theme going on here with these, we'll just say, not just Zio states, but satellite states for empire. That's what they're trying to make them into. Couldn't make it more obvious. And in the case of Machado, how do you give somebody the Nobel Prize that says these things and ever live it down again? Your award is worth nothing. But if you know the history of the Nobel Prize, it's better to just call it the Nobel Prize. It's not the Nobel Peace Prize. It's anything but peace. It's encouraging empire. And the question is going to be, what is Vice President Rodriguez going to do now? Because if there's one thing that is pretty obvious, the Venezuelan people are not going to take this lying down. So you have to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, this is an important question here, especially for those who may be in favor of this, you know, like some elected officials led by Wasserman Schultz in South Florida. You have to stop and think, if the Venezuelan people are not going to give in, and Trump intends to invade, you're probably going to need to have a draft in this country. And we'll see how well that goes over. Would you like to spend the next decade occupying Venezuela? Occupying the oil reserves? That's what we did in Iraq. Want to do it again? We haven't learned anything, have we? Although I will say, I think that the people overall have learned, but the powers that be have not, which is why we've said, as you can see the name of our channel, revolutionary change. That's the only way. There is no other way. They're never going to listen unless we, the people, unite. That's it. It's pretty clear. Now, for those who may have not seen any of the activity that is actually going on the ground in Venezuela, credit to Code Bink, who was able to get footage on the ground. And I believe this was in Caracas earlier this afternoon.
Gilbert in Caracas, Venezuela. Here we are near Miraflores Palace. People have come together to defend the Bolivarian process, to defend the government, to defend our President Nicolas Maduro. Last night at approximately 2 a.m. in the morning, we were bombed by the United States of America. The greater Caracas area was struck at a number of locations. People were killed, buildings were destroyed, infrastructure was destroyed, and they unfortunately terribly seized President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. They kidnapped them and took them to the United States. Here we are rejecting this horrible violation of sovereignty, not just sovereignty of Venezuela, not just against the Bolivarian Revolution, but against all nations and peoples of the region and in the world who desire to be free, that desire to maintain their sovereignty and pursue human emancipation.
That oil does not belong to us. It belongs to the people of Venezuela. And when anyone comes out and says Maduro is a brutal dictator, first of all, do you live in Venezuela? And second of all, do you understand how the United States controls the currency in Venezuela and has put sanctions on them, the likes of which that pretty much any other country would collapse under? That's not to say that there aren't problems. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Maduro's a good guy, because I don't know. I don't live there. You know what I do know? I know that there is a very wealthy Western or Venezuelan population that lives in South Florida, and they have a huge hand in politics. That's a big thing. That doesn't get talked about very much, now does it? It's going to get talked about now. The town that Wasserman Schultz lives in is called Weston, or as those who have lived in South Florida for the past generation have called it, Westonzuela. Extremely affluent, extremely powerful, and extremely involved in politics. And they have elected quite an army of puppets in many places. So when this happened, you better believe that those Venezuelans, the affluent Venezuelans, were extremely happy. This is a big part of capital an empire collapsing under its own weight. So when people voice an opinion about what they think they know regarding Maduro, you're not playing with a full deck. As I said, I'm not here to celebrate Maduro. From what I've read and observed, he's no saint. But again, who is? Show me. President Sheinbaum in Mexico seems to be doing a pretty decent job. But as I said, you're the leader of a major country with unconscionable levels of natural resources, which Venezuela has. What do you expect? This is a huge part of it. There is a lot of money involved. There's a lot of power involved. And we want it. We have wanted control of this for a very long time. It's the same issue in Cuba. It's the same issue all over the world with nations that don't want to play ball with us, led by Iran. If you're not part of the global banking initiative, the petrodollar, the Rothschild banking cartel, if you will, which Venezuela is not, then you get this. That's the plan. The plan is to seize control of all assets within the nation, take them over, and create a usury system for the benefit of those who will now get rich and powerful, more so than they already are. This is not going to benefit the people of the United States. This is not going to benefit the people of Venezuela. This is going to benefit the oligarchs who run the world. That's it. We've seen this movie one too many times, and it is not going to end. And you know what's interesting that I also discovered? It turns out that, like Sheinbaum, and I didn't know this, Maduro apparently is also Jewish, and he is vehemently against the state of Israel. So there's another example of somebody that they cannot have having a large platform because he completely gives the game away. You cannot have anyone of a profound level of importance. And guys, we're at 1,000 live viewers already. Smash that like button if you haven't already. The importance of understanding why this is so significant. You cannot have people of prominence that are Jewish speaking out against Israel. It goes against everything in terms of their narrative that they have cultivated for quite some time. So why would they stop now? There isn't any reason to believe that they would. And so when you see the streets of Caracas and the people, I don't see celebration going on. In fact, I've been watching all day, and the only celebration that I've really seen is from a few dozen people sprinkled in the areas you would expect to see that in. South Florida, New York. And that's about it. Are there celebrations going on in parts of Venezuela? Perhaps. But as I said, who in the F do we think we are? The Monroe Doctrine. And of course, it's always easy when it seems like just the country's going to roll over and there isn't any real fight. You can go kind of like the Zionists, you know? The IDF likes to go after women and children who are unarmed. But if they went after men who were armed, well, then it would be a completely different story. And the same is true for when you have the abuelos and the abuelas arming themselves with assault rifles and AK-47s and pointing them at American soldiers from places they can't see because they think they're going to come in and take over their country. We'll see how well that goes over. A little bit more here to add.
Here, we are in control of the situation. The government is in control of the situation. There will be no transition to another government. We are calling to peoples in the world to reject this. We want the president back. We reject this violation of our sovereignty, our dignity, and our right to pursue our own path forward. Down with U.S. imperialism.
Yeah, down with U.S. imperialism. You know why? Because it's going to be the end of our country as we know it if we don't stop. And I heard someone suggest today, why is it that China is allowing this to happen? Why was China meeting with Maduro just hours before the US went in and took him. Now it's obvious what China's doing. China's fortifying its positions economically to make sure that if there's a windfall, that they're able to catch it. China in particular is going to give us enough rope to hang ourselves. They're not going to engage militarily because that's what we would want. We want to be seen, they want us to be seen as the bullies of the world that we are, the imperialists of the world that we are, so that more nations will be inclined to move away from the US dollar as the global currency, to move away from the petrodollar, to trade amongst their own and forget us. What good are we? And all we continue to show is how right they are for forming BRICS and expanding it further. Everyone has an opinion that is in favor of what's going on right now. Let's see how much you like it when the ship really starts to sink. This is a situation that I can't even get agitated about to shout about it. I'm just very matter of fact about it. I want people to understand how dangerous this is, how bad this is, and how much worse it's going to get. And for anyone who thought that they were electing a president who was going to be a peace president, Donald Trump becomes the first person in US history to bomb 7 countries in a single year. So congratulations, you outdid Obama. Congratulations, you did it. I totally was going to beat Obama and I beat him at bombing other countries. Isn't that really great? Really great. No, it's really terrible. So I sympathize. I do. I sympathize with the American people who are against this. I sympathize with the Venezuelan people who are going through this. And I sympathize with anyone who has to cross the Zio state, because this is just another shot across the bow of what they intend to do. They're going to keep doing this until we stop them. And unfortunately, when we look at Capitol Hill, when we look for leaders that should be stepping up and speaking out against what's going on, we're not seeing them. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. Their responsibility. That's a huge part of this. The one person who did use their platform for all it was worth today was Thomas Massie, and we will talk about that with Anthony. But there is also a very important point here to be made that I don't want people to miss. Of all the people that have used their platform that are content creators, the one person that I keep coming back to that continues to amaze, that continues to surprise even, is Tucker Carlson.
Ben Shapiro was just sitting there being interviewed by Megyn Kelly and said something. He said something like, well, Tucker Carlson's, for Maduro, the communist leader of Venezuela, who I guess were on the way to killing or something, forcing out, regime changing him. And he defended Maduro. Didn't, actually. And Megyn Kelly says, well, Tucker said in his show that Maduro, most people didn't know this, whatever his many faults, I wouldn't hire him as an economist, okay? But whatever his many faults, has the most socially conservative country probably in the hemisphere. So Venezuela is just a fact. I mean, I didn't make this up. I'm not in charge of Venezuela. Just noticing that Venezuela has banned pornography, banned abortion, banned gay marriage, banned sex changes, and banned usury.
Now, whether or not you're a social conservative, I'm not. I'm socially moderate, I would say. I could certainly understand why a devout Christian like Tucker Carlson appreciates those decisions. Now, of course, I'm very libertarian, And I believe in live and let live. But I also understand the desire to ban usury. Now, for those who may or may not understand what usury is, it is a form of loan in which you can basically charge exorbitant amounts of money. What I would say is probably the worst aspect, there are many terrible aspects of Wasserman Schultz being a congressional representative in South Florida, who I worked with Jen to try to unseat. Here's what I can tell you. She has been financially in bed with payday lenders, the worst form of usury operators, period. They prey on the poor and the infirm. She's been in business with them for decades. She has probably caused more harm on that front alone than just about anything else she's done since she's been in Congress for over 2 decades. Usury is a practice that is banned in Christianity, but Judaism doesn't ban it. In particular, in the Talmud, it's considered acceptable practice. So when you think about why this is such a problem and the nations that have been decimated as a result, those that have bet against certain countries and have brought them to their knees, like George Soros did with the UK back in 1992. Now, here's the thing. The UK is not a small country, but other countries are, and they come under the thumb of usury power, hence the Zio state. And this is in conjunction with what we do, because the banking system is not completely controlled. Let's be fair. The investment banking system, the very, very top, is predominantly controlled by Zionist Jews. That's a fact. And so as a result, they're able to decimate other nations and put them under their control. Again, if we're staying in the southern hemisphere, in the South American continent, just look at Argentina, and need I say more, with Milei and what he's doing. Now it's becoming pretty obvious as to one of the main reasons why the United States, in conjunction with Israel, decided that Maduro has to go. He doesn't want to do business with us, and we have to make an example. We want the resource, and we want to be able to use usury in order to sell it around the world. Tucker has a little bit more to say.
You don't have credit cards with 40% interest in Venezuela. Okay. Ben Shapiro responded this way.
Tucker's made the point, I'm not going to here to be Tucker's defender, but he's made the point that Maduro is culturally conservative.
Who gives a shit? The guy's a communist dictator. Everyone in his country.
Who gives a shit? He's a communist dictator, and he doesn't want to play nice with my Jewy people. Don't you understand? Sir, he's a Jew too. Didn't you know that? I don't give a damn. He doesn't play nice with Israel. That's the real Jew land. Don't you understand, people? Oh, dear. This is what we think of when we hear little Ben Shapiro, because that's who he is. And even though Jen's not here tonight, we can still remind people of why Lil Ben is a whiny little bitch. Come on, little Ben, take another shot. Take another shot at a, speed bag and knock your own head off. Who gives a shit? I give a shit. And probably most people give a shit. So there's that.
He's eating dog. He's shipping fentanyl to the United States to kill Americans. Why do I give a shit whether he's anti-LGBTQ rights?
gives a shit? I do. I do. I'm not moving to Venezuela. I'm not pro Maduro. But I care about that. Why wouldn't I care about that? I've got kids. Like, first of all, I'm against abortion. Sorry, unpopular. I feel that way. I think it's really sad. I would personally become poorer to end abortion, voluntarily become poorer to end abortion in the United States. That's not a choice. Don't want to become poor, but I would because I care about it.
And when it comes to this particular issue, like abortion, of which I am not against because I believe there are always extenuating circumstances where a woman must control her own body, I can at least respect somebody like Tucker because this is a very honest issue for him. For a lot of other people, it isn't. But I understand. I don't agree, but I understand. And so I respect the fact that he is a true social conservative and that he is looking past a lot of these issues. To be fair, I will say this. The split in conservative media, in conservative America, is very real. So I would ask each and every one of you, if you came to the fork in the road and you had to decide between aligning with somebody like Tucker Carlson and somebody like Ben Shapiro, which fork in the road direction are you going? I'm going in whatever direction an honest operator like Tucker is going, at least on this. Doesn't mean I can trust him, not on everything, but I can trust him on this. And right now, this is everything.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you're offended that I do, but I care about it. Lots of people care about it. I don't think pornography is good. That really hurts people. You know?
I do want to say this.
I don't think.
For one thing I will say about pornography, and yes, I am a red-blooded American male, and I love women, and yes, I watch porn. But here's one thing that cannot be denied. If you can't see that what pornography has become today is detrimental to society, then I don't know what you're looking at. It's the violence against women. It's the OnlyFans. It's everything. It's all connected. This is not what it once was. And anyone who is objective knows that this is true. It is abuse of women, full stop. I recognized this decades ago. This started in the 90s. It wasn't full on, but it started. And trust me when I tell you, so much of what you see in pornography is abuse and pain. And then you see people out in society imitate it. Where do you think the IDF soldiers learn how to be so violent and rapey towards women and men and children? Where do you think they learn it? Do you know who controls the porn industry? I'm just saying. So let's just call a spade a spade. Tucker's right, to his credit.
Pretending that the sexes are the same is good. And you claimed that you didn't think it was good, but it turns out, quote, I don't give a shit. Maduro's against Israel. Oh, okay.
And this is why we have to be very clear. And yes, I saw some people in the chat mention that it's detrimental to men as well. Oh, absolutely it is. 100%. And this is, again, another example of the sidestepping that goes into this, especially by somebody like Shapiro, who's as bad as anybody that's out there. And look, I haven't checked his social media account. I haven't checked Il Jacoby's social media account. I don't need to. I just see what flashes across the screen. And they are all giddy as can be that Maduro was removed. Pay attention to who's celebrating this and who is revolted by it. That tells you all you need to know. Tucker Carlson, once again, using his platform for absolute good. This has been a conscious change in his career, and it wasn't just overnight. It's been going on for a while. Has he changed? I believe he has. Sometimes people evolve, and sometimes people devolve. So let's stay on the right side of this. Our good friend should be here in a couple of minutes. So I want to give you all the opportunity to remember that we are a small but mighty and growing channel, and we are extremely appreciative of all of you who have joined us this evening. Obviously, this is a very serious topic, but we have 1,500 of you in the live chat. Please make sure that you smash that like button. Please make sure you are subscribed. Please make sure you share the stream if you would be so kind. And you can also go over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty and growing channel, as we actually have gotten another viral clip, and we are closing in on 105,000 subscribers. So we're surely but steadily climbing up that mountain. So let's give a shout out to our current super chatters that are here this evening. Gezin82, great to see you, my friend. Thank you for the $5, or $2, excuse me. Monroe Doctrine, or as it is now being called, the Donroe Doctrine. Isn't that a really great name? I come up with these really clever nicknames. They're really great. Donroe Doctrine, you totally love it. Believe me. Alexander G., thank you for becoming a member and for your 1-month anniversary. Noticing is unstoppable now. I couldn't agree more. I don't know how you don't notice everything that's going on right now. And that is why we must continue to use our platform for however long we have it to continue to spread that message. Gezin82 with the $2 again. Nobel Peace is regime change. Well, this is also one of the reasons why they're not so keen to call it the Nobel Peace Prize anymore. They just call it the Nobel Prize. But this is a joke of epic proportions, in lieu of the fact that it was very recent that they handed this award to the soon-to-be, potentially, puppet president of Venezuela, of whom I have no doubt will never be recognized. How can you call it a peace prize? The hypocrisy knows no bounds, even though we know that this award was once given to Henry Kissinger and Barack Obama. That's right. They gave me the Nobel Prize, and I started 5 more wars. I totally did 7 wars, and now I'm going to get one. That's how he thinks. Duly noted with the $5. We used to hear about Somalia pirates. Now it's the US, UK, and Israel who are the pirates by sea and land. And air. Don't forget that. We'll rain hell from above, too, which is predominantly where it comes from anyway. So if we're being honest, we don't actually like to engage face-to-face. We like to do it from a very far distance. Of course, would you expect anything less? And Gezin with the $2. Nobel War Prize. I would agree. It definitely is a war prize. And $2 more. While pardon Honduras president. Hey, like I said, no one expects this to be logical. And Lemon Lou with the $5. Can a foreign country kidnap our dictator because most of our country hates him? Can Iran kidnap Milikowski? I don't see the difference with Maduro. Hey, no argument from me, man. I wouldn't mind seeing it. But at this point, what are you getting if we don't have Trump? You're getting J.D. Thiel, as he's now being called. And I certainly understand why. Jim Taleb with the $5. Thank you, as always, for checking in, my friend. Great to see you. Piano Man with the $10. Appreciate you checking in here. Libertarian Social Dem with the $1.99. The Zio's next target is Gus Petro and Lula de Savia. Probably. Trump already made it clear that it doesn't stop with Venezuela, that he is now intending to potentially put the screws to Mexico, Colombia, and Chile. Is that surprising? Shouldn't surprise anybody. Why stop when I can totally go as far as I want for now? Ruse3805, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Really appreciate you. Edward Gill, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Really appreciate it, my friend. And finally, M85619 with the $2. Kyle Kalinsky, Tucker Carlson. I can't decide if you are suggesting that Kyle is better than Tucker or Tucker is better than Kyle. Both have takes I agree with, both have takes I disagree with. So let's call it a split. That's what I would call it. That being said, once more, if you would be so inclined, please make sure that you smash that like button. Please make sure you're subscribed. Please make sure that you share the stream. And please make sure that you leave a comment. I bet you could do a mean but look, the American people were fooled once. Then I fooled them twice. And then I fooled them with Biden. And now the American people are fooled with Venezuela. Who knows what's next? Why stop now? That's my Obama for now. Haven't been practicing him. I rarely bring him out. But there are others that I will do the impression of, and I certainly do appreciate all your support. And one more wonderful super chat that I want to give a shout out to. Duchess of Camelot, love you, gal. Thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Thank you for all your hard work, Peter. I look forward to this channel and its followers changing the world in 2026. From your lips to the spirit above's ears, that's all I can say. You are wonderful. Thank you very, very much. So with that said, we have our esteemed guest for the evening, somebody who has put his life on the line for this country more times than I think he would like to admit. And of course, now, this is the type of person who I am very grateful to have a friendship with, because when it comes to this type of a situation, he is one of only 3 people that I turn to on the fly for an opinion. It would be Colonel Wilkerson, Sergeant Fritz, and of course, my friend, Anthony Aguilar. How are you, sir?
How are you doing, Pete?
I'm hanging in there, man. Of course, obviously, anything we talk about does not get discussed until after the fact. So I was willing to reveal at the beginning. You told me this would happen about a month ago, and I told you I sure shit hope you're wrong. Looks like you're not. And of course, this should not surprise anybody at this point, because we basically have a empire that has run amok and is kind of spiraling out of control at this point. Why do you think this happened besides the obvious reasons?
Well, you know, I'd like to give kind of a preamble to the discussion here by saying that I love coming on to your show with you and Jen, because there's no ulterior motive in this. To everyone listening, in terms of what I share in my opinion, realize it's not coming from someone that just studied this in a book or just picked up the evening news. For 25 years in the United States Army, I have fought in interventionalist wars, counterinsurgencies, countering counterinsurgencies, building counterinsurgent forces, large-scale combat operations, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, as I've said before, Tajikistan, where a lot of people don't even know we're fighting an asymmetric war, the southern Philippines, all over the globe. So coming onto this platform to talk to you is really because, one, I have a lot of respect for you and Jen, but 2, because I consider you both friends, and I consider your platform to be credible, and you always tell the truth. So that's why I come and when we talk, to come and share it with the audience, because I care about our country and I care about what our audience is informed in, and to take it from someone that has not only that's not only living it with all of us together here, but has lived it since I was 17 years old. I mean, I joined the Army at 17 and fought in every war our country has been involved in. So if you're going to take it from anybody, at least take what I have to say with a grain of salt, at least, you know, take it with some weight as to someone that's done it. So particularly to Venezuela, what we're seeing today, what we woke up to, fell asleep to last night. Earlier in the year, I said that we will likely be at war in Venezuela by the end of the year. Looking at what had already taken place in the preceding months, but knowing that military operations, even if you have a dominating military force, takes time. These things take time. Commanders have to have forces in the proper composition, disposition. You have to have proper chain of command and military structure established, especially when you have, in this case, a general or an admiral, Hosey, who resigned from his position, leaving a gap in a geographic combatant command, and then having to fill that in while you're still doing these interventionist drug boat strikes, which I still think are preposterous and incredibly illegal. So looking at where we are now with the actual, this is a war. The bombing on Venezuelan soil, whether it was military forces under Title X authority, which Congress hasn't declared war, so it's not, or it's CIA operations under Title 50 authority, which it seems to be that was the case. We now have, I mean, we kidnapped the president of a sovereign nation and then have now said we're in charge. Donald Trump basically Captain Phillips Venezuela. I'm in charge, I'm the captain now. He announced it this morning.
Let's roll it then. So this was definitely the talking point that I needed to have you on here for, because the audacity of this guy, and of course he's not in charge. Anyone who thinks that the Donald is in charge, you don't know jack squat about how things really work. So that's why we're here. We're here to learn and understand why this is the case. The absurdity of his statement earlier today, here it is.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country.
How are we going to run the country, Lieutenant Aguilar?
This was my fear since the beginning of this rhetoric, and the reason I started to think that war was inevitable is when early December 5th, when Donald Trump's signatory version of the national security strategy was released. Remember, this is the president's words to the nation on how he intends to protect the nation. And in it clearly establishes that we will assert our dominance in the Western Hemisphere, that we will enforce the Trump corollary. The national security strategy refers to that document as the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. If anybody is a student of history, you recall the last corollary we had to the Monroe Doctrine was Theodore Roosevelt. And that theory of Western Hemisphere intervention was speak softly and carry a big stick. Well, I would say the Trump corollary to this is speak loudly, lie, and drop big bombs. He's doing things in a way that are, by this point, so obvious that he didn't have a plan. And number two, this is being done at the behest and at the influence of Israel. And why I think that even more than ever, who was the first country, the first person to publicly announce and celebrate and congratulate this? Before Machado, before Maduro landed in New York, before he even got off the plane, Bibi Netanyahu, Milakowski himself, already making an announcement saying that this would open up a new era of relationship with Venezuela for Israel, that they would restart their alliance or their partnership. There is no doubt in my mind that the tactics we've seen at play in the Caribbean, both off the Pacific coast and in the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic, and what we've seen in terms of going into this conflict, in throwing all international law out the window. This is the playbook we've seen happening in Gaza and against the Palestinians, and there is no doubt in my mind that the Mossad and elements of the IDF were a part of this planning. In terms of what Trump has said here, when military plans are produced at the Pentagon, before they get walked across the river up to the hill to present to Trump. Although I think Pete Hegseth probably lives in a closet in the Oval Office, so it's just a matter of signal chatting the plans over to him. But if you look at what goes into this planning, you have military officers like myself from the Joint Force, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Joint Interagency, all planning. And typically we have operations on the shelf to pull off and dust off from everything from an asteroid hitting Earth to cases such as this. In every one of those operations, you have a paragraph 6 of an operations order. Typically, you have five parts of an operation order, but nowadays we always have this 6th part of strategic communication, where public affairs officers, what I would call propagandists under this administration, will craft these talking points. What it appears clearly to me, having been a United States military officer as we invaded Iraq, and hearing our president at the time, Bush Jr., talk about all of the reasons we're invading Iraq. To me, it seems like they took the Operation Rolling Thunder, they dusted it off, they Control F and found the word Iraq, replaced it with Venezuela, dumbed down some of the words so there weren't too many syllables, and fed it to Pete Hegseth to feed to Donald Trump. This reads exactly like our failed intervention into Iraq. And why did it fail? We didn't fail because of the inability to bring military power. We failed because we went into Iraq without an achievable objective politically. War should only be fought as a last resort when all other measures fail, when negotiations fail, when all elements of national power, diplomacy, information, the military, and the economy or economic levers fail, is when you introduce the concept of war. We haven't even started or attempted in the other arenas, and we're going to war as the first option. Donald Trump has now, as a country, put us into a position that within the coming month, before we hit Valentine's Day, before we buy Hallmark cards and buy each other chocolate, we will have boots on the ground in a sizable force. We already have boots on the ground because we have CIA and we have JSOC and we have interagency operations units on the ground in Venezuela right now. That's a fact. I'm talking about boots on the ground as a sizable military force, because who's going to hold things together until there's this replacement?
Exactly. That's the whole point. It's like, we're totally gonna occupy the country. Yeah. How are you going to do that? This is the thing. It's like you're basically saying we're going to have a draft, and let's see how well that goes over. We'll see how much the American exceptionalism is willing to put up with. But the Donald has a little bit more to say here.
Until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. And that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland.
The contradiction.
And who's standing right behind his right shoulder?
Yeah, Mr. Cuba himself.
That's not an accident.
No.
That's Marco Rubio putting himself in the spotlight behind Donald Trump, telling his audience in Florida, "This is for you. I'm still your inside guy." That wasn't an accident.
Now, since you have shared, obviously, what I consider classified information with me, which obviously I cannot repeat, we are going to share some classified information with the audience this evening. Don't ask me who I got this from. Let's just say that I know people in South Florida. Now, just one day prior to this happening, here's something a lot of people don't know. Netanyahu Milikowski may or may not still be in the United States. He was in a place called Bal Harbor, Florida. Now, for those who don't know Bal Harbor, this is an area of extreme Zionist Jewish affluence. It is just south of Aventura and just north of Surfside. And this cluster that runs along A1A is where it is the heart of where the Zio scum reside in the United States. Whether full-time or part-time, this is where they are. And this was an event that took place, I believe, on the 2nd. And here's a little snippet of commentary from Netanyahu himself.
The most important thing I would say is to combat anti-Semitism, because that's a disease that endangers not merely Jews, it endangers any society afflicted by this virus. And I think also to combat the blood libel of genocide. I mean, what a blood libel, what ridiculous charges and so on. And who is putting it forward? The people who want to say openly, death to America, death to Israel. They burn American flags, they burn Israeli flags. Fight the truth, fight the battle for the truth. I have to say, good legislation, good for America, good for Israel, but I would say above that, fight the battle for truth. We just fought and won a 7-front war, but the
All right, so I had to freeze it there for an obvious reason. Two things right off the bat. The first one, of course, is that he is referring to places like Venezuela, which are not towing the line, which are committing anti-Semitism for not supporting the state of Israel and their usury practices that they so desperately want to bring to their oil-rich nation. And then we won a 7-front war. Anthony, did Eretz Yisrael win a 7-front war that I was not aware of?
Well, the truth that the American people, that some are waking up to slowly, but for the majority of America, they're still hitting that snooze button, is that Israel is at war with the United States. They're simply doing it in a very surreptitious and nefarious way, that they are winning from eroding our national values, eroding our trust in our government. Do you think that Israel doesn't know already that that politicians are becoming questioned in their loyalties? They know that, and they keep pumping in the money. And in Venezuela, another war for them that they didn't even have to fire a shot. And I guarantee you, when we have boots on the ground and Americans are sacrificing their tax dollars, their security, and their sons and daughters in uniform in a war that cannot be won, I welcome anybody, we can talk about it on here now, to look at Venezuelan insurgency and ask yourself, we couldn't win and we did not win in Iraq. We could not win and we did not win in Afghanistan. We could not win and we did not win in Northeast Syria. Talk about Venezuela with an army that's also being backed by Russia and China. We haven't seen their response yet. It's coming. And we think with boots on the ground that we're going to maintain some type of structure of governance when we have a administration that doesn't even understand the politics of the region. I would bet money. I would bet my next paycheck right now, if someone took a coloring book of the Western Hemisphere and put it in front of Donald Trump, and Pete Hegseth can sit there and help him, no labels on the map, he couldn't tell you the difference between Venezuela and Colombia. Guarantee it. In all the times he's been shown it in his little maps of bombs being blown up, he doesn't care. The throttles and the leverages of this are not being pulled by our President Donald Trump. They're being pulled by the Prime Minister of Israel, Milakowski. And that's, America needs to wake up to that not only are we going to continue to spend you think any of the treasure and the oil and the money we gain from this intervention in Venezuela that Trump touts as, now the oil is ours again. To the average American, do you think you're going to see a penny of that? You won't, because we're going to start spending more, giving more to Israel.
I keep saying this all the time. We live in a country that never benefits from anything that the upper echelon of society ever does. This is imperialism of the worst kind, because you don't even have your people behind you. You just go and make decisions arbitrarily that have no consideration whatsoever as to what's in the best interest of its people. There are a lot of people around the world who would accept imperialism if it truly benefited them as people. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And there are people that believe still in this hogwash concept of American exceptionalism. But the more you see this, the more you see this commentary, the more you recognize who truly is in control here, the more it, and again, it's not a question of whether Netanyahu Milikowski's in control. He's not in control either. Who is in control is a oligarchic billionaire class that all happen to be Zionists. And most of them are Jewish, yes, but at the end of the day, they share an ideology. That is what they believe in. And that is why right now, as I try to point out to people, you want to know who really makes decisions? You are seeing Larry Ellison trying to do a hostile takeover over Netflix's head to take control of Warner Brothers. Nowhere else would this even be possible. We have the most concrete laws that we've ever had on the books against things like this. And he is just going to do what he's going to do because we are one nation under blackmail in an oligarchic system that has now spread their wings and doesn't give a fuck who knows it anymore. But let Milikowski say a few more things before we finish this clip.
Eighth front is the most challenging one, and that's the battle for truth. Speak the truth. You do anyway. Do it more loudly. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, we also welcome Senator Ashley Moody. You mentioned that.
Yeah, Ashley Moody. And you wonder why she still has a position of power? Is it any question how this works? So somebody's like, why doesn't Trump get rid of Ashley Moody? Why would he? It's not his decision. And even if he did, why would he care? This again, it's pretty obvious what we're looking at. This is a nation that is controlled by a foreign entity, or it's controlled by a traitorous ruling class that adheres to their interests above the American people. I don't know about you, man, but there's a reason this channel is called Revolutionary Change. It's not a mistake. How else do we fix this problem?
Well, first of all, I want to say, just so no one in the audience or anyone listening gets it twisted, I am by no means a fan of Maduro. And by no means do I think that it is just this administration or the Republican Party under this administration that has got us to where we are. I was not a fan of Joe Biden's just the tip intervention across the world, which led us into all kinds of problems that we're now seeing. I was not a fan of Trump's bombastic. I recall this clearly. I will never forget this in my entire life. December 18th, I'm in Operation Inherent Resolve. I'm the Deputy Operations Officer in the Joint Special Operations Task Force for both Iraq and Syria. Every day, planning and detailing the operations ongoing in Northeast Syria and in central and northern central Iraq, balancing all kinds of political fragilities and military and while fighting ISIS in Northeast Syria and fighting a growing insurgency that we thought we defeated, but we didn't in Iraq. And December 18th, 2018, Donald Trump, I have it saved, sent out a tweet when he was still allowed on X that the U.S. is leaving Syria. So under the first Trump regime, we had diplomacy by tweet without a lot of thought. I'm pretty sure to this day, it's one thing I'll ask when I meet my maker is, let me see an image. Let me see when Donald Trump sent that tweet. I bet he was sitting on the can. So from the first Trump administration to Biden to now the second Trump administration, and take it back before that to Obama with the let's just use drones and pretend we're not really there. I'm telling you, you cannot bomb people and blow people up, whether you're using a B-1 bomber, whether you're using an F-35 fast mover, or whether you're using a drone piloted by an Air Force young Air Force airman sitting in a pod somewhere in Las Vegas. You cannot bomb a country and defeat an enemy without putting boots on the ground. And as much as any president, Democrat or Republican, has tried to learn that, We have failed time and time again. America needs to wake up to think that if you think there is anyone in the Republican Party or anyone in the Democratic Party that isn't bought off by Israel, look it up. AIPAC and the like. You got to wake up.
We do have one that's not, and appears to be the only person worth his sweat that actually made a statement today to, let's just say, revoke anything that Trump had to say. This is the inverse. This is what should have been said. And who else would have said it but Thomas Massie?
James Madison warned us that in no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confides the question of war and peace to the legislature and not the executive. Madison called it the crown jewel of Congress. The framers understood a simple truth. To the extent that war-making power devolves to one person, liberty dissolves. If the president believes military action against Venezuela is justified and needed, he should make the case and Congress should vote before American lives and treasure are spent on regime change in South America. Let's be honest about likely outcomes. Do we truly believe that Nicolas Maduro will be replaced by a modern-day George Washington? How did that work out? In Cuba, Libya, Iraq, or Syria, previous presidents told us to go to war over WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, that did not exist. Now it's the same playbook, except we're told that drugs are the WMDs. If it were about drugs, we'd bomb Mexico or China or Colombia, and the president would not have pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez.
He's only saying what people that are outside of Washington typically say. But there is an understanding within the halls of Congress and within local governments, as I saw, including State Senator Chevron Jones, who was supposed to be the not-so-corporate progressive state senator in South Florida, saying, hallelujah for the Venezuelan people. This is a wonderful day. Local commentators all figuring out that when push comes to shove, people will show their hand and who they answer to. For whatever reason, Thomas Massie is not afraid to die. God bless him, because there's not too many others that are. And I'm wondering from your perspective, A, why do people still fall for American exceptionalism? And B, how is it that politicians that supposedly have a sixth sense of a lot of this can't seem to understand that people are never going to forget their position that they took on this issue aside from Israel, and realizing just how bad of a response it's been? It's been almost, I wouldn't say it's universal. I would say most people have completely condemned what happened today. But I have noticed an uncomfortable amount of elected officials at the federal, state, and local level that are supporting this shit.
Yep.
Why is that?
Well, it's within the Republican Party and with first of all, I'll say a lot of politicians are out of touch, disconnected from their constituencies, and they often speak to their detriment at times. And I think that they still think it's the cool thing to be. MAGA is still the cool crowd to hang out with. And oh yeah, war and overthrowing evil dictators. That's what America does. Well, if I'd like to break that down into I guess 3 boxes, if you will. If we truly intervened in Venezuela and overthrew Maduro because he is a dictator, if that's the reason, he's a narco-terrorist dictator. Well, the national security strategy identifies Xi Jinping of China as a dictator, Vladimir Putin of Russia as a dictator, Kim Jong-un of North Korea as a dictator, Ayatollah al-Khamenei since 1989 as a dictator, King Salman of Saudi Arabia as a dictator, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of Egypt as a dictator. So if that's the deck of dictators, now Maduro was also on that list. But if that's the list of regime change, we're out of Schlitz. We bit off more than we can chew. If it was about drugs, narco-terrorism and drugs, well, we pissed up the wrong tree, because the fentanyl that they're saying is this weapon of mass destruction against our population doesn't even come out of Venezuela. We know that. Again, you want to point the finger back to where the fentanyl comes from, you can go back to your dictator list of either Xi Jinping in China or Vladimir Putin in Russia, because of where the black tar and the opiate base for which goes into things like fentanyl and other opioid-based drugs goes through China and Russia, not Venezuela. So are they next? If that's the case, buckle up, America, because times are going to get real hard. Or the third bin, it isn't about dictatorship, because Trump himself has praised the authoritarian power of someone like Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin. He's celebrated it. He's invited them to the White House. We had, the Saudi Arabian leader, MBS here, last or month and a half ago, celebrating him. It's not about dictatorship. If it's about drugs, well, are we going to go after the actual source of it? I think not, because that's punching far above our ability. So what it's really about is power and money. As you said on your last time you were on, because I was listening, as you boiled everything down, as I boiled it down, we share that perspective: money and power. And does this give Trump power? Absolutely. Nothing gives a president more power than war.
And does anybody think for 1 second that the fentanyl crisis is not a CIA operation? I mean, at some point, I wish people were not so naive. That's the thing. People.
Well, I do know that unlike meth and other cut drugs you sell on the street, or what you would call a street jug, angel dust, PCP, fentanyl, or meth, speed, etc. It's not made under in someone's garage with ingredients from under the sink. Fentanyl is a pharmaceutical grade drug. It is a manufactured pharmaceutical. When you are put under in surgery and that anesthetologist is sitting there telling you 1, 2, 3 lights out, that is an opiate based, very similar to fentanyl, coming down that tube into your bloodstream. Fentanyl wasn't created by somebody in a jungle or by someone in someone's garage in southern Louisiana. It was made by big pharma. That's a fact.
Bingo. We'll continue.
It's about oil and regime change. And when it comes to regime change, we've already been down this road with Venezuela with nothing to show for it. In 2019, we recognized Juan Guaido. We seized their embassy here in D.C. We were told that regime change was imminent. Years later, Maduro remains in power. Today, we're told to place our hopes in other exiled figures: Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado. I wish them well, I do. But Congress should not express moral sympathy in the form of a blank check for military escalation and American lives. And let's take a moment to acknowledge the contradiction at the heart of this policy. This administration tells us that the Maduro regime is made up of narco-terrorists, and by escalating toward war, we would predictably create countless refugees. At the same time, this administration has moved to end temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans and deports them back to the very regime it condemns. So which is it? Are we prepared to receive swarms of the 25 million Venezuelans who will likely become refugees and billions in American treasure that will be used to destroy and inevitably rebuild that nation? Do we want a miniature Afghanistan in the Western Hemisphere? If that cost is acceptable to this Congress, then we should vote on it as a voice of the people and in accordance with our Constitution. And yet today, here we aren't even voting on whether to declare war or authorize the use of military force All we're voting on is a war powers resolution that strengthens the fabric of our republic by reasserting the plain and simple language in the Constitution that Congress must decide questions of war. I urge support for this resolution, and I yield back.
You know, the reason why you don't have a vote on war is because A, it can't pass because the people don't want it, and B, much like single payer health care, they don't want to be on the record for voting the wrong way, because then there's accountability. There's always these resolutions and different things that come up and no one ever is held accountable. But I got to tell you, when it's an issue that is banding millions upon millions of people together, it's very difficult to sweep this under the rug. And I will tell you, just as Thomas Massie is leading the effort in conservative America to have some semblance of the origins of the grand old party, you have somebody who is now mayor of New York City, who is the standard bearer for the anti-war left. Kudos to Mayor Mamdani.
Called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act and to make clear that it was an opposition based on being opposed to a pursuit of regime change, to the violation of federal and international law, and a desire to see that be consistent each and every day.
And he is the only person that is evidently in the Democratic Party, and the only one who is actually using his platform to actually push an anti-war agenda. Thomas Massie pushes it. And in the case of Mamdani, I mean, the guy's been in office for 2 fucking days and he's already got to be out there leading the whole fucking country. That also goes to show you, my friend, how fucking dead the Democratic Party truly is. I mean, truly dead. You just elected a mayor. Granted, it's New York. I know it's a big deal, but you have got to be kidding me. Like, he is the standard bearer for the whole country, and he's been there for 2 seconds. Totally. 2 seconds, he's there. Zohran, we kind of need you to take the reins here, because Schumer, Wasserman Schultz, Apak Shakur, that's, okay, Jeffrey's name will be Apak Shakur forever. They're all on the side of regime change war. They're just going to make it sound like it's not really great when Trump does it, but we're all on board with it. What is your take? Like, to me, the fact that there's just such a lack of voices, but kudos where, it can be given in the case of Mamdani and Massie. At least there's a couple of people out there with what I think is a reasonable amount of pull that people are gravitating to, that at least is a little bit of a slight sea change, if nothing else.
Well, I definitely, I give kudos to Mamdani, to Van Hollen, to Massie, to Bernie Sanders, to others that are outspoken and they have taken a stance. However, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party as 2 national parties don't carry that same courage and are not following suit with those individual voices. Mamdani is a Democrat because he had to run in a primary, not because he aligns himself to what most of the Democratic Party believes. I think same with Thomas Massie is, Thomas Massie is in a league of his own in terms of his representation of the people of our country. What I think is most concerning about the parties themselves is that they're no longer speaking for their constituents. They're no longer speaking for the people they represent that sent them to Washington. They're speaking for themselves. If I were to have the ability to look into, to see where all these congressmen who either say nothing, or like a Tom Cotton, who is very outspoken pro-war. Oh, yeah. Look at what drives where Tom Cotton lives: the war industry. The Hellfire missile is assembled and manufactured there in Arkansas. Israel has a company in the United States called Mistral USA, which is a Israeli company that manufactures and builds a one-way loitering drone. Guess where they put that together and build it? Arkansas. So when you look at why they're outspoken for a certain thing, war, because they're getting rich off of it. This is elementary, dear Watson. They are getting rich off of it. That's the reason. And what I think everybody should know, to every American should know, is that these politicians that are putting us all in danger, who will not put skin in the game when the time comes, who will not sacrifice when the time comes, not even they are safe from what we may face as a nation as it comes. There's no one on this channel and no one listening and no one in Congress, to include Donald Trump in the presidency, that's rich enough or powerful enough to protect from what's coming down, what could happen. Because look at what we've pitted ourselves against. I mean, we've pitted ourselves against pretty much every other nation. How many allies do we have? What alliance do we have going into Venezuela other than the backseat patting on the back from Milikowski of Israel? Who else do we have that's, yep, a la Iraq 2003 coalition, you know, with all the usual suspects on board? Who do we have with us going into Venezuela?
You're right.
Nobody.
Nobody.
We stepped into it without a safety, without a plan. And if any American can sleep well at night thinking that Donald Trump has it figured out, I would ask you to please get yourself mentally examined. I mean, there's some kind of cognitive dissonance taking place there.
Or share some of the hallucinogens that you've been taking for yourself, because clearly you need to be completely out of sight, out of mind in order to believe any of it. But it is tough to watch this. It's tough to watch it fall apart. It's tough to see all of what has happened to our broken empire. It's just obvious. And we don't have to be an empire, but by our current predicament that we're stuck with, this is what has happened to us. And I don't know what the future holds. I just know that right now, if you think the ride can't get more rough, it absolutely can, and it absolutely will. And I do worry, because right now it's obvious that there is a president that, much like our previous president, is not really in control anymore. It's obvious that Trump is losing it. It's obvious that he's slurring his words. He's clearly not, he's not sharp anymore. He's just not. And I can, much like people would show, you know, Biden from, let's say, 2015, 2016 to even 2020, how much of a different person he really was. And the same can be said for when Trump left the White House the first time to where he is right now. Two completely different people. And that's the worst place you can be. Because when the neocon State Department is running the show, that's the most dangerous place to be. We avoided it with Curtis LeMay. But who's to say that you don't have some psychopathic general right now who wants to be a part of world destruction if necessary in order to, you know, just have that.
Or are entirely out for their own, not thinking that the worst can come, that everything's fine, I'll get mine. Case in point, the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General 4-star Daniel Raisin Kane. That's what he goes by. Dan Raisin Kane is a call sign.
Oh, yeah.
I served with him personally and directly when we were deployed to in Iraq for operations in Syria. I know how he got appointed for that job. Imagine, as a 3-star National Guard Air Force officer, not active duty, not a retired combatant commander, not a chief of staff of a service, not special operations command, no significant commands held at all. As a National Guard Air Force lieutenant general who retired, Donald Trump called him back on to active duty as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Not only is that unheard of, but then also called him back onto active duty, gave him a 4th star, and then put him in the most powerful military position that we have in the United States. That's over everything. And I'll tell you, this guy, I wouldn't put him on a bus without telling the bus driver where to drop him off. I have worked with him personally. He only cares for his own ego and his own identity. Trump picked a chairman that would go along with exactly what Trump wanted to do. I am confident that during Trump's first administration, had it not been for the stubbornness of a chairman like Milley, and I'm not necessarily a Milley fan, but I do think he stuck by his guns when it came to, no, we don't do that. Now Trump has got his chairman in uniform, who is a patsy. He's got a Secretary of Defense who is not only a patsy, but is a zealot for Trump attention. And the rest of the cabinet, I mean, Oval Office meetings to decide these big decisions, there's not rational people in the room. Who is it? It's probably Steve Miller. It's probably Jared Kushner. And I guarantee you on the other end is Netanyahu, Milikowski himself, in every call on what decisions we'll make.
And what do all of those men have in common? I wonder. Yeah, they're all Zios. But of course, that's what happens. He wanted to be president again. He wanted to avoid any type of legitimate criminal prosecution. And they simply came to him and said, Donnie, we can take care of this, but you got to take care of us. No, that sounds really great. I'll totally do what you tell me. I understand it's business. We're going to make some really great deals together, and that's what we're going to do. And I want to leave you with this. I think it's beyond admirable what you and Josie and, Cliff and a lot of other people have, you've put on the uniform, you've served our country admirably, and in some cases, probably not admirably. And I think it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to say what you're saying. I am sure you have messages in the thousands from fellow soldiers, veterans or active duty, that are telling you, we appreciate you. We appreciate that you're saying this. We would like to say it too. We're not in a position to do it. But just know that we have your back, and there is a consensus that is growing amongst the ranks to whether we're at a point where they're ready to lay down their arms. I don't know, but I know something's coming, because we can't continue like this. The people that are in the know understand that our country is in a very precarious position now, extremely. And this is just one more example, which is why I haven't gotten so heated tonight. It's like I've been telling you guys for the longest time that this is coming, that this is the direction we're going in, because people simply can't get out of their own fucking way. And it's getting really sick and annoying. And that is why, if hopefully come the beginning of the spring, we do meet in our nation's capital, that we plan something that can be concise in terms of what we need to be doing. And if we do that, remember, it can't be one person. Everyone's like, well, who's going to lead us? It's like, well, that's not how it works. Because if you do it that way, it will fail. But if you recognize that everyone has the ability to lead in some capacity, and that everyone has a role to play in terms of how we're going to save our country, then that's our job. And if we can help facilitate in some way, well, then we're happy to play a role for however long this channel lasts. Because I think we understand that at any moment, they'll pull the rug out from under us and we won't have anything. So we have to use it for what it's worth while we can. And clearly tonight it's been great. And clearly there will be another conversation to be had soon enough. I'm hoping we'll get Sergeant Fritz and Colonel Wilkerson on, possibly as early as Monday, because more people that have seen this on the front lines and that have led other administrations can speak to the truth of this and say, this is a nightmare of epic proportions, and you wait until real boots are on the ground in Venezuela, and you have the abuelas and the abuelos standing with their AK-47s in the shadows that you can't see and start blasting away at our soldiers. And then the American flag draped coffins, and we'll see how then the American people feel about this shit. Everyone's got an opinion when it doesn't personally affect them. But when it does, then we'll see what happens when shit really hits the fan. Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. You and I both know that's very likely not to happen. Can't thank you enough for coming on. Always appreciate you being here. Final thoughts before you go this evening.
Hey, courage, leadership, starts from the house in the suburbs to the house on on Capitol Hill, and voices and platforms like Revolutionary Change, what you and Jen continue to keep people informed and have honest dialogue and conversations. That's what we have to keep doing. We have to keep doing this, because if you think that you think you're going to get the truth from legacy news or from politicians, you won't. And I encourage everyone to take action. I've said it before. Go to your state representative's house, not to their actual like home, but to the state house, to the state capitals, to the capital of the United States. If you live within the DMV, within an hour and a half drive, go there. Walk through the halls of Congress. It costs you nothing. But if we think that we can just lie our heads on our pillows at night and every morning we wake up, it'll be fine, it doesn't affect me. I'm telling you, you think waking up this morning to see what we did in Venezuela, that's going to change? Wait until those missiles and those bombs start hitting us here at home. And I'm telling you, it is coming, unless we, the people, do something about it. Because boots on the ground in Venezuela, boots on the ground in China, if China decides to take action against Taiwan because we've done so much saber rattling, we're going to have to do something about it. If you think Barron Trump, Eric Jr., the Kushners are going to ruck up and go fight, you know that's not true. Your children will sacrifice and die. My children will sacrifice and die. We will bear the brunt of this, not the elite. So, do you want the elite to take their riches and run and leave you without a home, without the ability to feed your family or pay for medical care or raise your family in a safe world? Because they don't care about that.
You're damn right. I know that this is a trying time, as I'm sure there's a lot more that will come about, and I'm sure we'll talk further, and we'll be having another conversation sooner rather than later. Once again, I thank you, not just for what you've done before, but what you're doing now, which may be even more important than anything you've done, because now you have the ability to lead. Before you were just a number, and now you are a leader. And as that continues to grow in size and scope, just know, Jen and I have your back, as do many others. And we look forward to continuing this collaboration to hopefully bringing about the revolutionary change this country desperately needs before it's too late.
Yeah, well said. And to Jen and Peter and Revolutionary Change, love you guys. I'm always here for you if you need anything, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm your number one fan.
Same here, brother. Have a great evening. We'll be in touch.
Take care.
You too. So it's unfortunate that we have to have these conversations, but it is imperative that we do. And this is why, as I've said, you cannot for a second take your eye off the ball in terms of why this is happening, why it's happened, and why it will continue to happen. And I bring this up because, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, of just a few days ago, just prior, and I believe that this was on either New Year's Day or it was on Friday, a billionaire Israeli Zio named Shlomo Kramer, because of course that's his name, went on, I believe, either with the Squawk Box and had a few things to say regarding where we're going with technology and what we should be doing with it.
Shlomo Kramer, also one of the founders of Checkpoint, another big cyber company. Shlomo, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How is AI, cyber warfare, shaping geopolitics right now?
So AI is going to revolutionize cyber warfare, cyber warfare from critical infrastructure to the fabric of society and politics, and undermining it, giving unfair advantage to authoritarian governments against democratic countries, First Amendment type of...
That's already happening?
That's already happening. You're seeing the polarization in countries that allow for the First Amendment and protect it, which is great. And I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order.
It's Time to limit the First Amendment. And it's always interesting when you see the bio of Shlomo. Cato Networks, co-founder and CEO, co-founder of Checkpoint Software, early investor and former board member of Palo Alto Networks. Where do you think this guy's money comes from? We give it to them. And then they get it, and then they invest. It's one big revolving door. You know, like Capitol Hill? This is a big problem. And now the person with all of this money and power doesn't want us to be able to have free speech. They get them to start wars. They get them to give endless amounts of money to their Zionist cause. And once the great noticing has becoming evident amongst the populace, well, what's the Israeli Zio billionaire to do but to demand that they shut us up? If it were up to Shlomo, he'd shut our channel down. You better believe he would. But he's not done. Not by a long shot.
In order to protect it and quickly before it's too late.
What do you mean?
I mean that we need to control the platforms, all the social platforms. We need to stack rank the authenticity of every person that expresses themselves online.
So every person who expresses themselves online needs to be under a microscope. Every one of you. You say anything, and we will be watching you. And they are watching us. Now they're just letting us know. I always feel like somebody's watching me, and I got no privacy. And if it's up to him, he'd be watching you take a shit every day. Maybe they do that too. Who the hell knows? But make no mistake. He's just letting the cat out of the bag now. Now they just don't care. We have to control everything that these people are saying because what they're saying is not true. Actually, it is true, but we have to stop it because it's affecting our ability to get even richer and more powerful. Call it what it is. And of course, Shlomo looks that way. He can't fit into that jacket. He's got short, stubbly arms. He's probably 5'5", hairy. Wears a lot of cologne. I can assure you of that. Wears a lot of cologne. Definitely that. And they want to control it all. And they also don't want people noticing. They want you to be a good little grunt, a good little peon, peasant, and just accept your overlords. Who could have ever imagined that a stumpy little man like that would fancy himself as an overlord? At least be a Chad of some kind if you think we're going to get down and accept your dominance over us. At least then it would look like Darwinism to some extent. This is not that. Not even close.
And take control over what they are saying based on that ranking.
The government.
The government should
control the social media.
Yeah, should do that. And we need to educate people against lies, and government need to develop cyber defense programs that are as sophisticated as the cyber attack. Today it's a 1 to 100 ratio. And really, government are not doing this today at any rate, and enterprises are left fending for themselves.
The technology is moving much faster than the political system typically can to respond to it.
So you need to use technology in order to stabilize the political system, and you need to put adjustments that are perhaps not.
I mean, we're at a point, though,
necessary.
Right? I mean, I can go on Instagram or TikTok, and frankly, it already is becoming unclear what is fake and what is real.
Exactly.
You know, the most amazing part about all of this, more than anything else, it's not that he says that bullshit, because we know what these Zionist Jew scumbags think. It's the fact that you have two panelists here who are not stupid. They know what's going on, and they don't push back. They don't even question what he says. They just go right along with it. You know why? Because as Jen likes to say, they live in the capital. They live in the comfortable part of society. And they want to remain there. So don't you dare get out of line. That's why I say, yeah, and who knows what they're saying online? It could be a distorted truth. We have to do something about this. Instead of, sir, you're talking about totalitarianism. You're talking about Big Brother spying on you, having you speak into the TV and demand that all of these people be loyal to your cause or suffer the consequences. Is this not the United States of America? Or are we living in a dystopian nightmare that we are slowly but surely allowing this to happen? That's what this Shlomo, the homo, domo is talking about. And they're going along with it? How are we not talking about this across the board? Now, it did make the rounds. This is, again, this is the ministry of truth. That's what this is. You didn't think it could happen? You thought that 1984 was just a fairy tale? It was a documentary. And it's happening right now. And it will continue to happen if we let it.
Eliminate that ability to discern truth from fiction, and what are you left with?
You're left with polarization of society and inner fighting, and you have to control that. And you see that already happening across the world. So this is an urgent need by the government to do that. And until then, enterprises are buying by themselves more and more cybersecurity solutions, but they can't afford all these solutions by themselves. So they are looking for ways to deliver more efficient consumption.
And I assume you have some of those ways, obviously.
Right. So, and that drives really the next generation of companies such as Wiz, CrowdStrike, Cato networks on the network that are platforms and are able to deliver this extended need for security in an affordable way for enterprises.
For enterprises,
right.
Not for governments.
Not for government, but government need to start building their programs, and the same tools can be used also by government.
But the two leaders.
I mean, he does not hide it, not even a little bit. We do not currently have government doing it, but we should. That would be great. So how about private enterprise gets in bed with the government through the Pentagon, and we can give you this technology? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Absolutely insanity. Absolute insanity. Period. And as I said, Shlomo Kramer, he's one of many, but to his credit, he's not hiding it. He's just letting it fly. I wish I could say that I'm surprised, but I'm not. When you don't put a stop to this, when there are no defense mechanisms, when there is no actual resistance to this oligarchic totalitarian takeover, what else would you expect from narcissistic sociopaths who get off on other people's pain? This is an inevitable conclusion to not dealing with big tech, to not dealing with the Zio state. To hear this language, even 10 years ago, would have had his head on a platter. But now, that's considered just kind of the norm. This is, again, why a lot of people are probably trying to disconnect. So it makes sense. But this is also why we have to be united against Israel and against this global takeover. This is what's happening. And they're doing it in record speed now because they know everyone, for the most part, that is awake is onto them. Now they have no choice. And that's why they don't even hide it. Now you know why they don't hide it, because they can't. They can't put this cat back in the bag ever again. So we must consolidate as a united people against this tyranny, or it will become a dystopian nightmare that seems to be growing every day. Do not miss this by any stretch. This is a warning, a very clear warning of what's coming and what these Zio fucks want to do. So let's not let them. Now, I bring this up because I know a lot of people are still enamored with Nick Fuentes, and I assume a lot of you saw that he had a collaboration with Joel Webbin. Now, I don't know Joel Webbin. I happen to know that he's a pastor in Texas. And I want to give you all an idea of where this, I would say he's a nationalist, is coming from. This is his statement prior to the conversation with Nick Fuentes. All right, I've picked up quite a few new followers, so I want to be completely forthright where I stand. Here are my views towards Israel. Diagnosis. I believe that by way of divine providence, that earth is filled with not only unique individual people, but unique and distinct peoples, nations, race, etc. I am not a fatalist or determinist. I believe people can change. I also believe peoples can change, but this happens slowly over the course of generations. I believe it is biblically permissible and in some cases even righteous. Colin, can't do this on my own. Thank you, sir. Since we are commanded to exercise godly discernment, to recognize for or notice different strengths and weaknesses of both individual people and collective peoples. Regarding collective peoples, this discernment should be understood as a viewpoint regarding generalities. There are always exceptions. In terms of general weaknesses, I believe those of European descent are generally marked by cowardice, moral passivity, and suicidal empathy. They regularly are content to prioritize the foreigner over even the welfare of their own children. Boomers, though not all boomers, have displayed this particular trait. Furthermore, I believe those of Jewish descent are generally marked by subversion, deceit, and greed. 4, politically speaking, I believe Israel has had a devastatingly negative influence on America. I do not want our children to fight their wars, and I do not want them lobbying in our politics or having an outsized influence on our culture. Number 5, religiously speaking, I believe that Judaism is antichrist. I believe it is a pernicious evil. I fully recognize that many Jews are secular and do not practice Judaism. However, just as many Americans today do not profess to be Christian, American was profoundly shaped by Christian thought and Christian values, so he says. Likewise, Israel has been deeply shaped by a religion that has as its foundation a complete rejection of Christ. A people shaped by a rejection of the logos. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Will have at least some degree of hostility towards God's natural order. They will resist, and at times even seek to subvert natural distinctions and hierarchy. This is liberalism, at least in its modern form. From the 20th century, liberalism is largely, although certainly not entirely, a Jewish project. Hence the anti-Jew message. The engine of liberalism is egalitarianism, the quest to flatten all natural distinctions, men and women, individuals, and even nations. I believe liberalism, especially modern liberalism, is arguably the single biggest threat to the world, particularly America and the church today. And I believe Israel is one of the most adamant proponents and defenders of liberalism. Again, to not make the distinction between liberalism and neoliberalism, to me, is deliberate on Mr. Weeben's part, my opinion. Prescriptions. Number one, I believe a godly Christian can hold all the views I mentioned above without sin. I firmly reject any ideology that would mistreat or persecute a people. I do not suppose those who would call for physical harm or violence to a particular people universally, everyone single on one of them, without fair trials and the objective proof of individual guilt of an actual crime, not merely sin. Those who follow me and Fed post about physically harming Jews are either feds, bots, wicked, or retarded. You will be promptly blocked. Number two, I want to see a national ban on pornography, exorbitant forms of usury that prey on the poor, and dual citizenship from any country for those who hold civil office in America. Reasonable. Number three, I believe that many individual people and collective peoples would humanely self-deport. I further believe that these groups would self-deport disproportionately. I believe Jews in America would leave at a higher rate than other groups, with many Jews who truly love our country and our values choosing to stay. That's an interesting distinction. I'll give them that one as well. Number four, I want to see America break ties with Israel in terms of geopolitics. I do not believe they are our ally. So it's a mixed bag. But this is what Christian nationalism sounds like from a Southern pastor's perspective. Some is acceptable, some is clearly not. This is politics. You have to hear the good along with the bad. Joel Webbin sat down with Nick Fuentes, and they had some interesting conversation.
Like the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, gyrating in front of a man dressed up like Christ on a cross in a public parade. Believe it or not, jail. Right away, jail. Right. Would you agree with that?
I would. I think I would agree with that. And I think that it's interesting how people in this country have such an aversion to anything that looks or sounds like that. But you look at very modern countries in the Middle East, for example, like the United Arab Emirates. People go to Dubai, and this is a hotspot for the world's rich, for entertainers. And a lot of people go there who are pretty secular and pretty liberal. But everybody knows that when you go to Dubai or Riyadh, for that matter, or any of these Gulf countries, which are very wealthy, very modern, technologically sophisticated, and cosmopolitan even, everybody knows the rules. And the rules are you don't disrespect Islam. And the whole country abides by that. And there's laws governing public displays of affection, modesty, all kinds of things. And nobody seems to have a problem because they know they don't mess around there. They take their religion seriously. And when you land at that airport, everybody knows you got to play by those rules. And people seem to be okay with that. But for some reason in America, even the insinuation that you might have something like that for Christ, for the church, people say it's the handmaiden's tale. It's Gilead. This is regressive. What is this? The Middle Ages? And maybe I'm more liberal than you. I don't know what the penalties would be specifically, but I think certainly the government needs to enforce some level of morality.
Yes.
Within reason. And I think what you're talking about when you say the perpetual indulgence, these are deliberately subversive, morally subversive. There's no positive good where that could be defended.
So once again, as I've been trying to point out to you guys regarding Fuentes, he's very charismatic. It's understandable why a lot of people gravitate to him, but he is now playing into the role that we just saw a Zionist billionaire play into, which is let's restrict some forms of free speech. Just a little taste, just a little taste. We're going to take a little taste away, you know? The only difference is that one person has a lot more money and influence than Fuentes currently does, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to get there. So you have high morality. Okay. Why is it your job to tell other people how to live? If you live a moral, conscious life, that should be enough. You know who doesn't talk like this, Nick Fuentes? Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is a very pious and moral person. He's not telling people how to live their lives. He's just telling people how he lives a moral life and he encourages everyone to do the same. You, on the other hand, are encouraging the rewriting of laws. This is what ends up happening when we are learning what's going to happen as the system continues to break itself apart. There are going to be people that are going to seek the opportunities of a lifetime to take money and power. And Fuentes is one of them. And if you think he will not attempt to rule with an iron fist, an absolute, just listen to what he's saying. Nuancing it carefully, maybe not carefully enough. But this idea that he's even hinting ever so slightly at a theocracy, fuck this shit. No way, no how. You either believe in the separation of church and state, or you do not believe in the First Amendment, much less the Constitution. And to me, when you talk like this, he's compensating, overcompensating for his own personal shortcomings. There is no disputing that. And anybody here who's a groyper, who thinks I'm wrong, prove me wrong. Or contradict what he's saying, because it seems pretty clear.
I don't know that I would outlaw, let's say, heresy, because there should be room for religious debate. It's like there always has been in the church or at different councils and things like that. But something that is deliberately and intentionally meant to blaspheme and offend God and the morals of any decent person, I don't think there's any basis for that. And so, of course, in America at the same time, we have a tradition of freedom of speech, but maybe we need to articulate what the basis of free speech is. Why is free speech good? If free speech is good insofar as we could debate about what form of government is best or what kind of society we should have, I'm willing to be more liberal when it comes to things like that. But filth, which it, like pornography, for example, what action? That's not political speech.
No.
And I don't think there's anything positively good. I don't even actually consider it speech.
It's not religious speech either.
No.
Although I have seen some Jews say that both abortion and pornography are Jewish religious sacraments.
Which is interesting.
Very interesting.
So what you have here, which is another example of what ends up happening when you put all eggs in one basket, like assuming that all Jews practice usury, that all Jews support Israel, that all Jews are responsible for pornography. No, a lot of Jews are responsible for pornography that are within that industry. But assuming that this is how all Jews feel, again, this is the danger when somebody who clearly doesn't like Jews at all doesn't say anything redeemable about any of them. Candace Owens does, Tucker Carlson does, but Nick Fuentes doesn't. And he makes it very clear that there really isn't a distinction. Now, whether he truly believes that or not, it serves him well to just say it's the Jew problem. You know why? Because there are a lot of angry, frustrated, and scared people out there that don't know what to do at this point. Now, maybe they're not ready to take up arms. Maybe they're not ready to really fight back, whatever it is, but they feel some solace in listening to his wisdom talk about this. Because unlike other grifters out there, like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, and especially Ben Shapiro, they like this guy. And they think he's fighting for their cause. And so what if we have to sprinkle in a little bigotry here and there, a little white supremacy here and there? As long as it's going to help me, then I'll take it. Nick is right about a number of key issues, and he's wrong about others. But the danger of a mixed bag is when the person in question wants that power. Anyone who has to get power should be wanting it or having to take it reluctantly, not even wanting it. Because trust me, you don't really want it. Not when you understand the ramifications that have come with it. Now you'll see what Mamdani's going to have to go through. Because now the saddle is on his back and people are looking at him for leadership. Not AOC, despite what some of you online are saying. No, Mamdani is the person that a lot of people are gravitating to right now, because who else is there? And then, of course, you have Thomas Massie. But those are elected officials. When it comes to people in our medium that are using their platform for absolute good, how many of them are there? How many of them have a crystal clear understanding about what's going on right now and are not mincing words, not fucking around for even 5 seconds, understanding that every second we fuck around, another Palestinian baby gets their head blown off? Or now it's going to be the Venezuelans who are going to get it. How? There is nothing complicated about this at all, unless you're thinking about a career and money and power. That's it. Period. So when Mr. Fuentes says what he says, believe him. He's not lying. One thing I could say about Fuentes that I truly appreciate, truly do, and this is probably the one reason I cover him. He tells you exactly what he's thinking. He doesn't hide anything. He's nuanced and subtle about it, but he gives you the clues. It's right there for you to see. If you can grasp what he's saying, it's pretty clear. He has a little bit more to say about this issue.
So I tend to agree. I don't, like I said, I'm probably not as conservative when it comes to religious law as maybe you are, or some Protestants, or even for that matter, some traditional Catholics who say there should be no freedom of religion, which is, I think, what you're saying. But I certainly think that there should be some basic standards like they have in Russia or any other country.
So
I don't think Nick is going to kiss the wall, but I also don't trust him. And this is why you always have to take it with a grain of salt. So he made sure to parse his words very carefully at the end regarding whether or not he believes in a theology, in a theocratic system. Clearly, Pastor Webben does believe in that. That much is clear. But there's another element to this story, one more element to cover that's very important.
When Trump ran in 2016, he didn't say I'm the most conservative. He didn't say I'm the most right wing or the most Republican. He said I'm America first.
Right.
He said this is about globalism and nationalism, not liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans. It's about globalists, internationalists, and nationalists, people that want to put the American people first. And in his inaugural, that's where I got the name of my show. And just funny story, when I started my show with Right Side Broadcasting Network, they asked me what I wanted to call the show. And my first instinct was the Nicholas J. Fuentes Show. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, that's too long. No one knows who you are. No one knows your name. I was like, okay. They said, so you need something shorter, something different. And I really had no idea. A month later, Trump gave his inaugural. And in the inaugural, he said, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first.
Yeah.
And I heard that and I said, That's it. Like that. And it's because that really encapsulates who we are. When I say we and like our kind of people and they, the people that are against us, it's those that that have a sense of American identity, that it's about the American people and their history, their heritage, going all the way back even before the founding, before the settlement of the North American continent, where we come from, who we really are, and putting that first, that's the priority, explicitly identifying as Americans. And even, what was the point of the border wall? Yes, it's to keep foreigners out, but I thought it was bigger than that. It was a tangible representation that said, this is America. That is the rest of the world. It gave us definition in a physical way.
And this is why a lot of people, if you look back, there were plenty of politicians for decades prior to Trump that talked about a border wall. Remember when Hillary Clinton was questioned about it, and she said, well, I wanted a border fence. Yeah, because there's a distinction without a difference. This is a classic example of why American nationalism is going to hit a fever pitch. Now, depending on how you look at nationalism, it can be in very dangerous hands. And in the case of Fuentes, the type of nationalism is one that will be used for political and economic gain. I am America first, but I'm America first in the way it's supposed to be. I support this country, and I support the people that are here. And yes, I am a hardliner on immigration. But why? Because multinational corporations do not give a flying fuck about the American people. They care about their bottom line and nothing else. That's why they bring people into this country to work for slave wage. Because if they could make us slaves, they would. The only way we fight back is through a labor movement. And in addition to that, I know you're not going to agree with me, Jen. Take that off, please. You see, Jen likes to throw me off when I start getting into something. It is imperative that we recognize what it is going to take in this country. It's a labor movement, period. Single-payer healthcare, a living wage, but that is predicated on having a system in which we have a jobs program. You know, jobs that we actually need, you know, things that are really important. What do we need? Welders, doctors, electricians, engineers. We don't need more administrators and stock traders and gamblers and military. That's what the powers that be want. When do we start thinking about our country? When do we start thinking about what we have to do in order to have a robust infrastructure that has high-speed rail and nuclear power? How are we going to get off of fossil fuels and hydraulic fracturing? How are we going to catch up to China? The only way we can, which is by prioritizing our country. China prioritizes their country. India prioritizes their country. A lot of countries like the one I'm in right now, Ireland, the Irish prioritize their people. Why can't we prioritize ours? I know we can. We have to be willing to put differences aside. That's imperative. So that's America first. It's not that complicated, guys. But people within positions of power and strength do not want that. Because the whole point of the capitalist system that is dying a very slow death right now, it's not about we the people. It's about we who can exploit the rest of the people. That's got to stop. There's plenty to go around. There's plenty of things that we need. So let's collectively work together to make it so. It's not that hard.
I said, that's who I am. I'm America first. And that's something that Ben Shapiro could not claim.
Right.
The Democrats could not claim. You could even say the capitalist class. And by those, not to sound communist, but the wealthy, the owners, the people that own the multinational corporations, and they live everywhere. You know, they have houses in Europe and Asia and America. They do business everywhere. They could not even call themselves America first. So whether it's...
Because typically you think it's conservative and liberals, you know, and conservative over here, it's free trade, capitalism, you know, like, and so, you know, or like a Ben Shapiro type, you know, like, oh, he's one of us. And those were kind of the dividing lines. And we're like, how come things just keep getting worse and worse? Like, well, it's like, it's ping pong, but like both sides are really just two sides of the same coin. And you're right. Trump really, in a lot of ways, said like, the reason we keep losing is because both teams are against you. Both teams. Like that's not the paradigm, liberal conservative. The paradigm is the world or us.
Well, I would say that Webben hit it right on the head at the end. But again, the nationalist perspective that they are fighting from is one that I can't abide by because it's obvious that they have an agenda. But understand why their message is resonating. If you're not pushing an America First message, you will lose. Everyone will lose. Because it's either America First or America No More. And that future is not going to look anything like what it is right now. So we're going to have to make a conscious decision about what is going to come after this current broken economic and political system, because it's broken beyond repair. You can't fix it. What comes next is what we also have to be preparing for. And whatever Webben and Fuentes are selling, I can assure you, some of it's going to sound great, but a lot of it's going to suck. Don't fall for it. We've got a lot of work to do. Now, I would be amiss, before we conclude for the evening, not to cover a very important story that I cannot save until Monday because Jen won't let me. But Ian Carroll, for those of you who know, sat down with Tucker Carlson and they discussed the importance of not letting the Charlie Kirk assassination go. And I agree, it is not a story that should be let go. And here is what happened during their conversation the other night.
Story that's been covered up, any story that you suspect foul play in the reporting or in the mainstream kind of narrative, the first thing you have to do is hone in on what are the documented primary source facts that we can read and understand and see and hear. And so then I just started sifting through and I started watching body cams and I started listening to 911 calls and I started repiecing it together for myself because I'd found there's a number of really great reporters that I'll credit throughout here, like John Cullen and Jason Goodman and Mindy Robinson and yourself. You did some on it too. Alex Jones did some on it.
I got nothing, but it didn't smell right.
Well, you at least spoke up. You at least were someone that was in that mainstream media space that was not buying it because it was just, it stank. And so there's all these people that have made media that synthesizes it and made media that speculates and takes it much, much further, especially into the Saudi angle that we'll talk about. But for me, I was like, I need to start with understanding the information and see if I can arrive at a similar factual understanding of like, when I look at the original evidence without these narratives on it, do I arrive at a similar conclusion? And immediately it only takes you like 5 clicks on random pieces of evidence on that map to realize that it's clearly not a lone gunman in the Mandalay Bay.
From the very moment that this story was a global phenomenon on September 10th of last year, I suspected right away that something was wrong when the first person who gave his eulogy of Charlie Kirk was Netanyahu Milikowski. Much like Netanyahu Milikowski, and again, the whole thing about our conversations coming full circle for the evening, Netanyahu Milikowski being the first person of prominence to laud the Donald for his actions in Venezuela, They give away the game every single time. And as we've pointed out, and as we've covered with Candace, with Ian, with Tucker Carlson, and this is the other thing about Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes says that Israel had nothing to do with Charlie's assassination. Really? Because all the evidence kind of suggests that Israel really did not want him involved in anything in politics anymore after his decision to not accept their money. He was taking it for a long time, but I guess he got his mind right the right way. And they decided we can't have that. So what did they do? They had a public execution. They made an example of him. And that's why now you're seeing very few people speak out the way they should, and many people speak in the way of totalitarian understanding. They had to do it publicly. They had to make an example, and there are many reasons for this. Charlie wanted to open up the books and have a better understanding of how the money was being spent and where it was coming from. And the people that were running a grift the whole time did not want any of that coming out. And why would they? It is a grift. Turning Point USA is one of the most impressive grifts ever. And as I said, I've gone to their events. I see what they're doing. And you think that's cheap? No, it's not cheap at all. Very expensive. And they do events all the time. And why do they do it? Well, for a number of reasons. To elect pro-Israel conservatives into power. And the second that that crystallized, the great awakening, the great noticing was happening. And that's what Charlie decided, as was indicated in text messages that Candace Owens revealed, that he understood that he might be martyred. And he accepted that reality. And then he was dead. Despite what some people say, I'm pretty sure he's dead. Jeffrey Epstein, that's another story. But Ian's got more to say.
Because how would I have this massive cluster of 911 calls coming from the Bellagio, which is like, I don't know, like half a mile to a mile up the strip. It's like a giant block and a half. If you've ever been to Vegas, Vegas is a crazy place of gigantic monolithic buildings of sin that it stretches on and on and on. And the Bellagio is way up on the northern end of the strip, and the Mandalay Bay is the southernmost building. And most of these calls come in an hour and more after Paddock has allegedly killed himself. And we're talking like people that work there. We're talking security guards. We're talking victims, people alleging that they've seen the shooter, describing the shooter, and it happens in multiple waves. And then a lot of them are clustered around, for example, those 9 body cams that capture audio of multiple bursts of automatic fire while we're getting 911 calls from the Bellagio saying that there's active shooters at the Bellagio, while the police dispatcher is saying we've got a shooter at the Bellagio. So when you dig into this primary source evidence, you very quickly realize that this is not just Paddock. It's not a lone gunman. And so once I familiarized myself with that, then I expanded out to like, okay, so then what did the people that did all this work, what did they conclude?
I like Ian. He's a curious guy. He's a Chad, if you will. Handsome fella, very tall, about 6'5", I think he said he was. And he has collaborated with Candace a number of times. He's collaborating with Tucker now, and he's done a good job. Some of it clearly is a grift, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's a career and he's making money. Yes. But you know what? He's on the right side of a lot of issues. Like a lot. And in the case of the Vegas shooting, one thing that I always thought made no sense whatsoever when it happened. Does everybody understand how strict these casinos are when it comes to metal detectors and firearms, even crossing a line into any of these facilities? The idea that he got an arsenal into that hotel room at Mandalay Bay still doesn't make any sense. You can kind of throw a lot of that other stuff out the window. But that one issue, at the moment it happened, I thought, how? I've been to Vegas quite a few times. And mostly for business, just want to put that out there. How could he have possibly gotten in there? How? There are always these excuses. But it just seems pretty obvious to me that the only reason why we haven't fallen under complete totalitarian control in this nation is because so many people are armed. And I do believe that there are active efforts always made to try to take guns away. And we know why. Think about how this country would be right now if that were not the case. And I'm not a gun enthusiast by any stretch. I support the Second Amendment, sure. But I'm also, I observe. And what I'm observing is a ruling class that desperately wants us to get under their thumb and never be let go. We can't let that happen.
Was their understanding of this evidence, and where did they take a possible explanation? And that's where it gets really interesting. And we don't know for sure, but I think there's actually a pretty solid lead. And whatever it is, it's still at play in the modern information space. Because anytime you have one of these shootings or, false flag events or anything that gets covered up on this scale, right? If you buy the mainstream narrative, all bets are off. There's no facts there. There's no understanding of reality there. If you buy the mainstream narrative about 9/11, you have no level of understanding of even how many buildings fell or why they fell, like let alone who could have, brought these towers down the way they came down, who could have, guarded these hijackers the way that they were guarded all the way there, funded it, etc. But once you realize that the mainstream narrative on one of these events is for sure not the whole story, then you actually open up to a whole world of almost any explanation is possible.
On that note, Ian is 1,000% correct. When the corporate mainstream narrative is revealed, believe the opposite. Like when Kash Patel said, "See you in Valhalla," covered up the crime scene. Again, covered up the crime scene. Nothing to see here. No forensic evidence regarding Charlie's assassination. The most logical conclusion that I've come to when it came to his assassination was some type of an explosive device in his lapel and it blew up in his neck. That to me is the one that makes the most sense. I'm not convinced it was a gunshot. But I also believe that there were many people involved and many distractions that took place at that time. And there were obviously several plants in that audience. We know that. So where do we go now? What do we do now? Whenever they're giving you a narrative, like why the hell are we in Venezuela? Why is Charlie dead? Why are these billionaires allowed to control us with no resistance? Thank you, Defo. And I'm willing to believe that, sure. It goes without saying. And anyone who's been watching this channel since we've taken off last spring, I didn't support Charlie Kirk. Neither does Jen. In fact, not long before Charlie was assassinated, he decided to highlight me and about 4 or 5 other content creators as like the main people in populist left politics to be on the lookout for. I welcome Charlie's challenge, if you will. But I also respect the fact that Charlie never ran from a challenge, never avoided conversation or dialogue. And I always thought that that was very telling in terms of his overall character. One that I didn't agree with when it came to his theocratic views, but I certainly can appreciate somebody who was willing to let other voices be heard. And that is not something that is common in politics today, and we all know that. Being disparaging doesn't work. Just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. And we know that there's a lot of false idols out there. It is our job on this channel to do our part, to make sure that we are not only speaking the truth, but we are not allowing any outside influences to affect our decision-making. Just the truth and nothing more. And especially today, when it is so desperately needed. I want to thank you all very much for being with us this evening. We have a slew of super chats to get to before we call it a night. So one more time, if you are so inclined, which we hope you are, because somebody's got to help us pay the bills. Just kidding. Patreon.com/revolutionary change for as little as $5 a month. You could be a supporter of our small but mighty channel that was over 1,000 live viewers from about 30 minutes in and hasn't let up since. We love you all for your amazing support. And so, where did we leave off? We left off with Duchess of Camelot, Hamburger 1975 with the $5. Good to see you, sir. I have to pay for human interaction, but this is not a pity party. It's not a party at all. It's just sad. Well, I hope you're not talking about this party with revolutionary change. This is a great party. This is where you come on a Saturday night to have a great time. I'm just saying. X through glass with the £2. Had to make sure I got that right. Anthony, can the Army protect the Constitution yet? Hey, we've been waiting for that one, my friend, for quite a while. Perry Warish with the $5. Thanks, Peter. Keep up the good work. Thank you for your support, Perry. Jessica May, great to see you. $4.99. What a great news day to get off of work early and watch Peter Unfiltered. Thank you for all you and Jen do. Thank you, Jess, for your amazing support. And we know you've been with us from our early days. Thank you so much. The Progressive Lefty, thank you for being a member for 10 months. It's a sad day for the world. I couldn't agree more. David Barnacastle Jr. with the $5. How can a citizen enact a peaceful revolution against Zionism? Occupy Mar-a-Lago, shut down traffic for a month, or do we do more than protest? Yes, the way we do this is through economic boycott. It's the only way. You have to hit them in their wallets. That's the bottom line. Nawal Najer, thank you for the $19.99. Really appreciate your amazing support. Tony D, thank you for being a member for exactly 2 years. Tony Aguilar, you're spot on. Great show, Free Palestine. Agree, brother, agree. Hamburger with the $5 again. Anthony is an American hero, and so is Peter, but to a lesser extent. Hey, I'm not stealing his valor, but we all have a role to play. Yes, an 82 with the $2. You will own nothing and be unhappy. I agree. I don't want to be unhappy. I think we all can own a piece of this American dream. Duchess of Camelot with the $5. Peter, you should play the video of Maduro speaking on Israel. I did at the very beginning, Duchess. Libertarian Social Democrat with the $1.99. Hollywood, Wall Street, Silicon Valley are under who? Well, you can kind of come to a pretty safe conclusion. Liberal Social Democrat with the $4.99. Zios use algorithm by putting family, mommy, couple vlogger, charlatan influencers, hustle entrepreneur culture to distract and brainwash people. We agree. Deep Green VO with the $1.99. Hold up. Nick Fuentes wants censorship? Wow. Like I said, he's very good. He's also very deceptive. Paul Smith with the $5. He won't kiss the wall, but he will kiss the ring. That's probably as accurate a statement as you can make about Mr. Fuentes. Judith Ann Campbell with the $10. Thank you so much for supporting the Second Amendment. I can compromise on all sorts of things, but leftists who want to disarm are so naive. Thank you for not being that. I agree. CLC with the 199. Wait, are you a fiscal libertarian, a leftist? Yeah, I'm left libertarian populist. That's pretty much where I would say I fall under. But I believe in a free market. I know that that's something Jen again doesn't want to hear, but that is something that I do adhere to. I think that we have to recognize the human spirit, but we also have to recognize human greed. And if you can't balance the two, well, you get what we have now. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. I am going to get approximately, if I'm lucky, 3 hours of sleep before I have to get up to get on a plane back to the States. I have truly loved and enjoyed my time here in Ireland. I will reflect upon it with Jen when I get back, and we'll discuss it on Monday since Jen was here recently as well. And we obviously have to get to our last super chat. Jamie Uri with the $10. In Tom O'Neill Chaos, Charles Manson and the Secrets History of the 60s, Reeve Whitson's mentor, Pete L., who was apparently killed with a poison dart and an umbrella. What do you think they got now? Hey, if it can be done, it will be done. Thank you, Jamie. So with that said, smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. And also, before we go, because I know I mentioned it earlier, but if you haven't subscribed on Rumble, please make sure that you subscribe there. And also, please click the QR code for Revolutionary Change Pack. You want to try to make a difference? This is how you can also help, as we have formed a super PAC that is dealing directly with AIPAC and all that the Israel lobby has to offer here in the United States. We're currently supporting Butch Ware for governor in California and Shama Sawant for Congress in Washington's 9th District. We're being strategic and sound. We hope you'll contribute and make a difference. So one more time, smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We'll see you Monday, and free Palestine. Good night, guys.